Welcome to Fright Club. The first rule of Fright Club is you do talk about Fright Club, based on true events. The hollow smiles of Everwick. What happened to me in Everwick still haunts me, and even now, as I write this, I can feel something watching me from just outside my peripheral vision. I'm sharing this as a warning. Some places aren't what they seem, and some smiles hide terrible secrets. I never believed in the supernatural or conspiracy theories. I was a marketing executive in Boston, completely absorbed in the concrete world of deadlines, presentations, and office politics. My life revolved around the next promotion, the next client, the next project. That is, until everything fell apart 6 months ago. My wife left me, taking our dog and half our savings. The company I'd given 15 years to announce layoffs the following week. I didn't just lose my job, I lost my identity. The panic attacks started shortly after, first at night, then during the day, until I could barely leave my overpriced apartment. My doctor called it a complete nervous breakdown and recommended a change of scenery, somewhere quiet, away from the pressures of city life. Reconnect with nature, he said. Find a place where time moves slower. If only I'd ignored that advice. I found the listing for Everwick almost by accident. A small town nestled in the mountains, population just under 1,000, with a quaint main street that looked like something from a Hallmark movie. The house was ridiculously affordable. A 2-story Victorian with a wraparound porch that would have cost millions in the city, going for less than a quarter of my apartment's value. The listing mentioned a tight-knit community that values newcomers and an ideal place to heal. I should have questioned why such a perfect property was so cheap. The first thing I noticed upon driving into Everwick was the smiles. Everyone, the gas station attendant, the teenagers hanging out in front of the ice cream parlor, the old men playing chess in the park. Everyone smiled at my car as I passed. Not the quick, polite smile of strangers acknowledging each other, but wide, lingering smiles that showed too many teeth. I remember thinking it was refreshing after years of city dwellers actively avoiding eye contact. I pulled up to Watson Realty, just off Main Street, where I was meeting Helena, the agent I'd been corresponding with. Before I could even get out of my car, the office door swung open, and a woman in her 50s with perfectly styled blonde hair stepped out, that same wide smile plastered across her face. "Michael, you made it! We're so excited to have you join our little community," she called out, waving enthusiastically. I hadn't told her what kind of car I drove. I hadn't even told her when exactly I'd be arriving. And I definitely hadn't mentioned my arrival to anyone else in town. Yet, as I walked into the real estate office, she greeted me by name, my full name. "Michael Warren Cassidy, right on time. I just knew you'd be punctual," Helena said, extending her hand. Her grip was ice cold, despite the warm spring day, and she held on a beat too long. "Everyone's been so looking forward to meeting you." "Everyone?" I asked. I didn't realize I was expected. Her smile didn't falter, not even for a second. Word travels fast in Everwick. We don't get many newcomers, especially ones looking to put down roots. Speaking of which, let's get you to your new home. I almost corrected her. I hadn't committed to buying yet, only viewing. But something in her unwavering confidence made me hesitate. The house was even more charming in person, with intricate gingerbread trim and a garden bursting with flowers I couldn't name. As Helena gave me the tour, 3 different neighbors happened to stop by, each bearing welcome gifts: homemade bread, a casserole, a bottle of something they called Everwick Special Reserve. Local wine, Helena explained. Michael Warren Cassidy from Boston, the marketing executive, each one would exclaim, as if I were a celebrity they'd been expecting. One elderly woman patted my cheek with surprising familiarity and whispered, "You have such perfect skin. You'll do wonderfully here." By the time I signed the papers that afternoon, yes, that same day, at what I now realize was an absurdly fast pace, I'd met at least a dozen residents who all seemed to know details about my life I couldn't remember sharing. I attributed it to Helena being thorough, to small-town friendliness, to my own stress-addled memory. I was so desperate for a fresh start that I ignored the warning bells. That first night in my new home was perfectly silent in a way city apartments never are. No traffic, no neighbors arguing, no distant sirens, just absolute stillness. I should have found it peaceful. Instead, I found myself straining to hear something, anything that would break the unnatural quiet. Around 3 a.m., I finally heard a sound, soft footsteps on my porch. Figuring it was an animal, I peered through the bedroom window, expecting to see a raccoon or stray cat. Instead, I saw Mrs. Winters, the elderly woman who'd brought me the bread earlier. She was standing motionless in my front yard, face upturned to my window, that same wide smile visible even in the moonlight. She didn't wave or acknowledge that she saw me. She just stood, smiling up at my window, perfectly still. I ducked away from the window, heart pounding. When I gathered the courage to look again 10 minutes later, she was gone. I convinced myself I'd dreamed it, a manifestation of anxiety about the move, about starting over. The next morning, as I walked to the local grocery, everyone greeted me by name. Everyone smiled those two wide smiles. The clerk at Morgan's Market didn't ask for my phone number when I paid, but she wrote it correctly on my receipt anyway. "For our rewards program," she explained, still smiling. "We like to check in on our newest community members." It was as I was leaving, arms full of groceries, that it happened. The old man who ran the hardware store next door accidentally bumped into me. As I steadied myself, he leaned in close, his smile momentarily gone, and whispered urgently, "You shouldn't have come here. It's too late for me. But you still have 28 days. Get out before..." "Walter! There you are!" A younger man rushed over, smile firmly in place. "Dad, you know you're not supposed to wander off without me." The old man's face snapped back into that same wide smile, so quickly it was as if the warning had never happened. "Just welcoming our newest neighbor, son. Just being friendly." The younger man gripped his father's arm tightly. "Sorry about that, Michael. My dad gets confused sometimes. We're all just so happy you're here. You'll fit right in, I promise. Soon you'll be just like us." I nodded and hurried home, a chill running down my spine despite the warm spring day. That night, I noticed 3 different residents standing in my yard, just staring at my house, those hollow smiles gleaming in the darkness. And that's when I knew something was very wrong in Everwick. The next week was a blur of forced neighborliness. People brought more food than I could possibly eat. They offered to help with home repairs I hadn't mentioned needing. The local seamstress happened to make shirts in exactly my size. The barber knew precisely how I liked my haircut without asking. Every interaction felt rehearsed, as if the entire town was performing in some bizarre play where I was the only one who hadn't read the script. I began to notice other strange patterns. There were very few children in Everwick, maybe a dozen in the entire town, and they never played outside alone. The ones I did see maintained those same fixed smiles, speaking in unnervingly formal sentences. "We are most pleased with your contribution to our community, Mr. Cassidy," a girl no older than 8 told me when I donated to a school fundraiser. Her smile never reached her eyes, which remained calculating and cold. At night, the watchers in my yard increased. Sometimes 5 or 6 of them, standing perfectly still for hours, their faces upturned to my windows. I started keeping the curtains drawn at all times, but somehow, I could still feel them watching. One morning, I found a symbol carved into my front door, a circle with what looked like a stylized eye in the center. I asked Helena about it when she stopped by with yet another casserole. "Oh, that's the founder's mark," she said, her smile widening impossibly further. "It means you're being welcomed into the community. It's a great honor, Michael. The founder has chosen you." "The founder?" I asked. She led me to my front porch and pointed toward the town square, where a bronze statue stood. From this distance, it looked like a typical town founder monument, a stern-faced man in 19th century clothing. Edward Everwick founded our town in 1847. His vision keeps us united even today. Something in her tone made me uneasy. The way she said vision sounded almost worshipful. Later that day, I found myself standing before the statue. Up close, the founder's face seemed wrong somehow, the features slightly asymmetrical, the eyes too deeply set, the smile too wide, just like the townsfolk. At the base of the statue, an inscription read, "His vision unites us, his eyes see all, his smile lives in us." I was still reading when Mayor Davis approached. "Admiring our founder, Michael. Wonderful. We're having our Spring Renewal Festival this weekend. As our newest resident, you'll have a special place of honor." His smile stretched so wide, I could see his molars. "I wouldn't miss it," I lied. That night, I dreamed of the statue. In my nightmare, its bronze eyes followed me, and its metal mouth opened wider and wider until it split the face in half, revealing rows of needle-like teeth and a writhing darkness within. I woke, gasping for breath, my bedroom filled with a sickly sweet smell like rotting flowers. On my bedside table sat a cup of tea I didn't remember making. When I went to the bathroom to splash water on my face, I noticed something in the mirror that stopped my heart. The corners of my mouth were red and irritated, as if something had been pulling them outward. 12 days after arriving in Everwick, I decided to research the town's history. The local library was a small building staffed by a middle-aged woman named Martha, who, you guessed it, greeted me by name with that same hollow smile. "Working on a project, Michael?" she asked, as I requested books on local history. "Just curious about my new home," I replied, mimicking their perpetual smile as best I could. The town records were sparse, but I found something odd. Every quarter, like clockwork, the local newspaper would mention a community renewal ceremony, followed by announcements of several new residents fully joining our Everwick family. The same surnames appeared generation after generation, with new ones added only after these ceremonies. Even stranger, I couldn't find any death announcements or cemetery records after 1847, the year of the town's founding. People in Everwick apparently didn't die, they just rejoined the founder. I was copying down dates when Martha's voice came from directly behind me, making me jump. "Find anything interesting?" she asked, her smile now looking strained. "Just getting to know the town's traditions," I said. Her eyes dropped to my notes. "The community renewal ceremony is private, Michael, for fully integrated members only." Her hand closed over mine with surprising strength. "You'll experience it soon enough. Only 28 days to go." I pulled my hand away. "What happens in 28 days?" Her smile widened until I heard a faint cracking sound from the corners of her mouth. "You become one of us, of course. The founder's gift takes exactly 40 days to bloom." I left the library quickly, my heart racing. Back home, I examined the food they'd been bringing me. The bread, the casseroles, the special reserve wine. All of it had that same sickly sweet smell from my dream. I threw it all away and vowed not to eat anything I hadn't purchased and prepared myself. That night, unable to sleep, I noticed movement in my garden. Crawling to the window, I peered through a gap in the curtains. Helena and Mayor Davis were pouring something into my soil, a thick, reddish liquid. As they worked, they chanted in voices just below a whisper. "Prepare the vessel, prepare the ground, the founder hungers, let his smile be found." The next morning, I found a letter in my mailbox from someone named Rebecca. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. "Michael, I don't have much time. They'll notice I'm not smiling soon. I arrived in Everwick 2 months ago. What they're doing to us, it's not human. Don't drink the water. Don't eat their food. The special reserve speeds the process. Check your skin for marks, circular patterns that look like bruises. That's where it's taking hold. If you're still yourself, meet me tonight at midnight behind the old mill. Come alone. I think I found a way to stop it." Rebecca. I had noticed small, circular bruises appearing on my arms and back over the past few days. I'd attributed them to moving furniture, to stress, to anything but what they actually were, signs of whatever was happening to me. That night, I slipped out my back door and made my way through the woods to the abandoned mill at the edge of town. Rebecca was already there, a thin woman, perhaps a few years younger than me, with dark hair and the first face I'd seen in Everwick without that horrible smile. "You came," she whispered. "I wasn't sure you would." "What's happening in this town?" I demanded. She pulled me inside the dilapidated building. The founder was a cult leader who discovered something in the caves beneath this town. Something old, something that offered him immortality in exchange for vessels, human vessels. Vessels for what? I don't know exactly, but whatever it is, it's been using the people of Everwick for over 170 years. It takes them over gradually, hollowing them out from the inside until only the shell remains. The smile. She shuddered. That's the first outward sign, the muscles of the face being stretched by whatever's growing inside. She rolled up her sleeve to reveal circular bruises similar to mine, but more developed. The centers had darkened to black, with tiny red tendrils spreading outward like roots. It spreads through the water, the food, even the soil. They cultivate it, feed it with blood. Every seasonal ceremony, they sacrifice one of their own to keep it growing. And now they're preparing us to join them. "How do you know all this?" I asked. "The previous owner of your house, he was researching it too. James Miller. He disappeared the night before his 40th day. They said he left town, but..." She pulled out a small journal. "I found this hidden in the mill. It's his research. And I think he was developing something to fight it." Before she could say more, we heard voices outside. Rebecca shoved the journal into my hands and pushed me toward a back exit. "Run. Get to your house and look under the floorboards in the attic. There's more there. And Michael, if you see me again and I'm smiling, run the other way. It means they got me." I fled through the woods, the journal clutched to my chest. Behind me, I heard Rebecca scream once before being cut off abruptly. I didn't look back. I spent the night reading James Miller's journal by flashlight. His handwriting grew increasingly erratic as the entries progressed. but the information was invaluable. James had discovered that the entity beneath Everwick, what he called the Founder's true form, fed on human consciousness. The townsfolk weren't just hosts, they were food being slowly consumed over decades. Most importantly, he believed he'd found a weakness. The entity couldn't tolerate certain compounds, specifically a mixture of copper sulfate, hemlock extract, and human blood that hadn't been infected. He'd been preparing this mixture when he vanished. I checked under the attic floorboards as Rebecca had instructed and found a small wooden box containing vials of powdered substances, a copper bowl, and more detailed notes. I began mixing the compound according to James's instructions, using my own blood as the binding agent. By dawn, I had a viscous blue liquid that smelled like metal and earth. According to James's notes, this wouldn't just protect me, it could potentially harm the entity if applied to its central form, which he believed resided inside the Founder's statue. I had just hidden the mixture when someone knocked on my door. Through the peephole, I saw Rebecca, her face now fixed in that familiar, terrible smile. "Michael, open up. I have wonderful news about the ceremony," she called out, her voice unnaturally cheerful. I backed away from the door. "I'm not feeling well, Rebecca. Maybe later." Her smile didn't falter, but her voice dropped to a hiss. "We know you met with her before we corrected her, Michael. We know what she told you. The Founder sees all. But it's not too late. You can still join us willingly." I remained silent, and eventually she left. Looking out the window, I saw her join Mayor Davis and several others gathered at the edge of my property. They were watching, waiting. In the distance, I could see people setting up for the Spring Renewal Festival in the town square. The statue of the Founder had been decorated with garlands of strange red flowers. According to James's journal, the festival would culminate at midnight with a joining, presumably their euphemism for sacrifice. I was running out of time. By my count, I had been in Everwick for 37 days. According to both Walter's warning and James's journal, the transformation would be complete on day 40. The festival was in 2 days, my 39th day in town. That night, I tried to leave Everwick. I packed a small bag, took James's compound, and snuck out to my car. But when I turned the key, nothing happened. The engine was dead. I popped the hood to find several components missing: the battery, spark plugs, even parts of the wiring harness. I decided to leave on foot. With a backpack containing the compound, the journal, and some supplies, I set out along the main road leading out of town. I walked for what felt like hours, the road winding through forest and hills. But as dawn broke, I found myself standing in Everwick's town square, directly before the Founder's statue. Somehow, the road had led me in a circle. I tried a different direction, hiking through the woods, using my phone's compass to maintain course. Again, I mysteriously ended up back in town. It was as if Everwick itself was shifting around me, ensuring I couldn't escape. Exhausted and terrified, I returned home to regroup. As I approached my house, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Rebecca and several other townsfolk were inside, searching through my things. Through the window, I could see them examining the attic, finding the empty hiding spot beneath the floorboards. I retreated to the mill, the only place I could think to hide. Inside, I found more of James's notes scattered about, as if someone had been interrupted while studying them. One page caught my attention, a rough map of tunnels beneath the town, with an entrance marked behind the waterfall at the edge of Everwick. With nowhere else to go and the townsfolk searching for me, I decided to try finding the tunnels. The waterfall was small, more of a large stream cascading over rocks, but behind it, partially hidden by moss and ferns, I found a narrow opening, just large enough for a person to squeeze through. Armed with only my phone's flashlight and the vial of James's compound, I entered the darkness beneath Everwick. The tunnel smelled of wet earth and something else, that same sickly sweetness that permeated the town, but stronger here, more concentrated. The passage sloped downward, occasional side tunnels branching off in different directions. I followed James's map as best I could, heading toward what he had marked as the chamber. As I descended deeper, I began to hear a sound, a rhythmic, wet pulsing, like an enormous heart beating. The air grew warmer, more humid, and the walls of the tunnel changed from stone to something organic, a slick, reddish membrane that seemed to throb in time with the pulsing sound. After what seemed like hours, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. My flashlight couldn't illuminate its full extent, but what I could see turned my stomach. The floor was covered with the same membranous substance, now clearly organic tissue that rippled and shifted as if breathing. From the central mass, tendrils as thick as tree trunks extended upward, disappearing into holes in the cavern ceiling. I recognized them immediately. They corresponded to the locations of important sites in Everwick: the town hall, the library, the church, and most prominently, the town square where the founder's statue stood. These weren't just tunnels, they were arteries feeding whatever lay beneath the town. In the center of the chamber stood a stone altar, ancient and worn. Upon it lay a book bound in what looked horribly like human skin. I approached cautiously, the pulsing sound growing louder with each step. The book was open to a page covered in spidery handwriting, Edward Everwick's journal from 1847. I read by the dim light of my phone. May 15th, 1847. I have made the bargain. The entity beneath the mountain offers immortality and power beyond measure. It requires only vessels to extend its consciousness to the surface world. My followers will serve as the first, but more will be needed as we grow. The process takes 40 days, the changing of the vessels to accommodate the entity's essence. The first sign is the smile, the facial muscles adapting to the new inhabitant. Then the mind merges with the greater consciousness. Individual thought fades. We become one with it. We become eternal. The sacrifices are necessary to maintain the bond. 4 times yearly, one vessel must be fully consumed so the others may continue. A small price for immortality. Tonight, I take the first step. I will drink the extract and become the primary vessel, the conduit through which it speaks. My statue will serve as the anchor point, connecting the entity to the town above. Those who resist will feed our garden. Those who accept will live forever as part of something greater than human. The founding of Everwick begins tonight. I was still reading when my phone's light caught movement at the edge of the chamber. Figures in robes were emerging from the tunnels, at least a dozen of them, their faces obscured by hoods. But I could see their mouths, those same stretched, inhuman smiles. I recognized Mayor Davis's voice as he spoke. "You shouldn't have come here, Michael. This is a sacred place, the heart of the Founder's vision." "What are you?" I demanded, backing toward another tunnel. "We are Everwick. We are the Founder's vessels. We are the many faces of the one beneath." They spoke in perfect unison, their voices blending into a single, multi-toned sound. "And you were to join us willingly at the festival. Now you will join us another way." They began moving toward me with unnatural coordination. In desperation, I grabbed the book and threw it toward them, then ran for the tunnel I'd entered through. Behind me, I heard them give chase, their movements unnaturally fast. I emerged from the waterfall as darkness was falling. The spring Renewal Festival would be starting soon. With the robed figures close behind, I had only one chance: James's plan to attack the entity through the statue. I ran toward the town square, clutching the vial of blue compound. The festival was in full swing. Townsfolk gathered around tables laden with food, all wearing their perpetual smiles. Children stood perfectly still, holding red flowers. At the center of it all was the statue, now draped in red garlands and surrounded by candles. As I burst into the square, all activity ceased. Every head turned toward me, every smile widening in unison. They moved as one organism, stepping toward me from all directions. "The vessel resists," they said in that same unified voice. "The vessel must be prepared." I fought my way through the crowd, their hands grabbing at my clothes, my skin. I could feel the bruises on my body pulsing in response to their touch, the infection within me stirring. My own face muscles twitched, trying to form that horrible smile. With a final burst of strength, I reached the statue and uncorked the vial. As I began pouring the compound over the bronze figure, Mayor Davis grabbed my arm. "You cannot stop what has already begun," he said, his face splitting into an impossibly wide grin, the skin at the corners of his mouth tearing to reveal something writhing beneath. "The Founder's gift is already within you." I felt it then, something moving under my skin, trying to take control. With the last of my will, I upended the vial, covering the statue's face with the blue liquid. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The bronze began to bubble and steam. A high-pitched keening sound emanated from the statue and, simultaneously, from the mouths of every person in the square. The townsfolk fell to their knees, their smiles contorting in pain. The statue's face began to melt, revealing something underneath that was not bronze, not metal at all, but a pulsating organic mass. The Founder's true form, connected directly to the entity below. As the compound ate through this tissue, the screaming intensified. Mayor Davis, still clutching my arm, began to convulse. I watched in horror as something pushed its way out of his mouth. A writhing, eel-like creature that thrashed once before shriveling up. All around the square, the same thing was happening. The townsfolk collapsed as the parasites controlling them died, their bodies finally releasing what had hollowed them out from within. The statue crumbled entirely, revealing a pulsating column of organic matter extending down into the ground. As James's compound continued to eat through it, the connection was severed. The earth beneath the town shook violently, and a sound like a massive, agonized howl rose from below. I staggered away from the chaos, my own body fighting against the partial infection within me. I could feel the thing inside me dying, burning away under the effects of the compound I'd absorbed through my skin. I made it to the edge of town before collapsing. The last thing I saw was the buildings of Everwick shaking, cracks forming in the earth, as whatever lived beneath lost its connection to the surface world. I woke up in a hospital 2 towns over. According to the doctors, I had been found on the side of the road, severely dehydrated and delirious with fever. I'd been unconscious for 3 days. When I asked about Everwick, the nurse looked confused. Everwick? There's no town by that name around here. Later, I convinced a sympathetic orderly to check online. He found only scattered references. A small settlement founded in 1847 that was abandoned after a landslide in the early 1850s. No mention of Edward Everwick or his statue. No record of the town I had known. It's been 6 months since my escape. The bruises faded after weeks of painful fever. my body purging whatever had begun growing inside me. I've tried to move on, to convince myself it was all a hallucination brought on by my breakdown. But last week, I found something that chilled me to my core. While shaving, I noticed a small mark behind my ear, the circle with an eye that had been the founder's symbol. And sometimes, when I'm alone, I catch myself smiling a bit too widely in the mirror. Worse, I've been having dreams, vivid visions of tunnels beneath other towns, other communities with too perfect residents and strange local traditions. The entity wasn't destroyed. Its connection to Everwick was merely severed. It's still out there, still hungry, still seeking vessels, and I think a piece of it is still inside me. I've started researching small towns with unusual histories, places with founders who are still oddly celebrated centuries later, communities with strangely low death rates or missing person cases. I'm writing this as a warning. If you find yourself in a town where everyone smiles too widely, where they know things about you they shouldn't, where they bring you food with a sickly sweet smell, run. Don't stay even one night, because by day 40, you won't want to leave. You won't even remember why you should. And if you ever meet me in person and I'm smiling too broadly, well, you know what to do. Have you ever noticed something off about a too perfect community? What signs did you miss? The entity is spreading, and next time, it might choose your town. After all, we're all looking for a place to belong, a community that welcomes us with open arms and wide, hollow smiles.